Welcome back to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Samuel Timothy.
And I'm Taylor Rowe. Today we're starting a new series called Best in Class, and what we're doing is really diving into and exploring what best-in-class companies, best-in-class organizations are doing from a marketing perspective. And so today we dove into what best-in-class companies are doing from a mindset and approach. So we wanted to start pretty high level with you in terms of how these companies, how leaders at these organizations, the ones that are really succeeding, right, in terms of how we define what best in class means. Best in class means what it sounds like, right? They're leading in the industry, they're innovators, they're growth oriented, they're companies that we all aspire to be, right? If we were to ask ourselves, hey, what does our company look like in a perfect world? How is it structured? How do we acquire customers? How do we grow? That's what we wanted to define and explore what that looks like. And so all of these components, all of these ideas are real examples, ideas that we see from companies that are succeeding, companies that have succeeded in the past. And we wanted to format them in a way, in sort of a mini series here, where each week we dive into different components of best-in-class organizations. So today we're starting with the best-in-class mindset and approach in relation to marketing and what those organizations look like. So we hope you enjoy the episode. Please give us a like, subscribe to the podcast. Let's dive right in.
So Taylor, we're fortunate to have the front seat access to a lot of what goes on with our customers and seeing what works and seeing where are some of the areas where our customers don't do too well, right? Sometimes it's the competitive nature of the marketplace. Sometimes it's the leadership. All of those things are affecting, what our customers sometimes do. But we also have an opportunity to study some of the industry leaders in the categories where our customers compete in, all of which has given us exposure to what some of the best-in-class company do when it comes to sales and marketing. And what our goal in the upcoming weeks is to kind of uncover and unpack some of those learnings that we've gotten by studying the best-in-class companies, some of which happen to be our customers, and some of them we've learned from having studied their competitors and the categories that they compete in. So hopefully in the upcoming weeks we can uncover some of those, and our goal today is to probably elaborate on just one core area of what best-in-class companies do, which is mostly from a mindset and approach when it comes to marketing specifically, and some of it would have to do with sales as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very excited about this series of diving into, like you said, what we see best-in-class companies doing, and almost our goal here is to kind of paint the picture of if we were to be a perfect organization, at least from a marketing or sales and marketing perspective, what does that look like, right? If we can take all the key components and ingredients, if you will, of what works really well, what other companies are doing really well, and combine those all together, what does that look like? So before we get into the details and the nitty-gritty around best-in-class approach to individual tactics in marketing, we wanted to start with just as you said, a general mindset and approach, right? So how do best-in-class companies approach marketing, and how do they think about marketing? How is it valued within the organization? How is it prioritized? And what are those companies doing well, and how do they get to that point? So to start off, I think what we've seen, the companies that are very successful, these companies that are best in class when it comes to marketing, have a very deep understanding of three things. One is their customers, one is their product, and the third is, as I just mentioned, really the value of marketing. And I don't know if you can prioritize those three things. Obviously, they're all very important, but really the one that stands out to me the most, companies that are the most successful at marketing, they have a very, very deep understanding of their customer. And really, if you think about what you're trying to do as a marketer, and you think about what we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to reach our audience, we're trying to sell to them, right? We're trying to get in front of our audience, educate them on the value of our product or service, and get them to ultimately want to buy that, whatever that product or service is. So having a deep understanding of your customer is probably the most important and probably most overlooked aspect of marketing. And the companies that really understand the need to have a deep understanding and prioritize having a deep understanding of the customer are at the top of the top when it comes to best in class.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen the best in class companies do when it comes to understanding the customer is they are doing marketing from a customer centric standpoint. They're putting the customer in the middle of everything. So it's not their messaging, their product is all revolved around the customer and not like, oh, here's our best product, just come and buy our product, right? Because they really are. They have a deep understanding of customers' pain points, the problems that they're trying to solve, and being very empathetic toward the customer, what they're dealing with every day, right? And then even evolving or refining their product offering and service offering to really tailor to that customer. If you do that really well, the customers will come to you, and you will get a lot more referrals. You will get a lot more loyal customer base. So understanding the customers, you couldn't emphasize that enough.
Absolutely. And so if you're a company, an organization, a marketing leader, and you say, hey, I want to become a best-in-class company, I want to transform our department into a best-in-class marketing organization, and the first thing you want to start with is customer and having a deep understanding of your customer. Honestly, the first thing you should do is start with customer interviews. You need to talk to your customers. Why do they like working with you? Why did they choose to work with you? Have they worked with any competitors in the past? What are those differences like? What was the buying experience like? How did they find out about you? Have they considered leaving? Talking to existing customers, past customers, even sales opportunities maybe that chose to go with a competitor. Really need to get into the mindset and understand, what makes them tick, what do they like about working with your organization? Because a lot of times what you think is the value of your product or service, what you think your competitive advantage is, doesn't matter as much to your customer, right? So really understanding what's important to them is probably the first thing I would do, if you were trying to build up a marketing department or change the culture internally from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, a lot of times I think we're too lazy to do that hard work of interviewing the customer and getting to know them on a personal level, right? And I know a lot of sales organizations do have win-loss analysis, and they go interview their lost deals, and sometimes their VP of sales or someone in the senior leadership might call on a nice opportunity that they were working for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then when they lost, they want to really go find out what actually happened. But very rarely, marketing do a great job of analyzing why did we not win, why did not convert a lead into an opportunity, why didn't we win an opportunity? But essentially, it does take some effort on the part of the marketing team and the business to really get to know their customers on a deeper level. It's not something you can just assume. A lot of times we've been in exercises where we're coming up with a buyer persona or ideal customer profile. It's all assumptions based on what they think, who their persona is, and what they believe is their ideal customer profile. It has very rare to do with what the customer actually believes about their product or service or the company.
Right, and I think that's the key, is that we're in such a digital environment, a digital world that marketers are maybe a couple of steps removed from the end customer, and it's so much about data and analytics, and how can we infer all this information from all the data that we have, and what pages they're looking at on the website, and how they're finding the website, and where they're engaging with us the most, and what traffic source is leading to the most pipeline or qualified opportunities. And as you mentioned, we're doing all this work, and nobody thought to, hey, have we tried talking to our customer? Have we tried taking them out to lunch? Have we tried jumping on a phone call? Those are some simple things that make a world of difference, instead of trying to make assumptions or inferences from what the data is showing. So to recap and summarize around customer, what best-in-class marketing organizations are doing from a customer perspective, again, they're talking with their customers. They're consistently doing customer interviews. Again, this is not just a one-time, hey, I'm hired as the head of marketing. I'm going to do a customer interview, and now I understand who our customers are, right? The world is ever evolving. Your customers are changing. Your product should be evolving and growing. The competitive landscape is changing. Outside, economical and environmental factors are changing. So you should have some sort of system in place to continuously do customer interviews, get that feedback loop, and implement those changes. That's the big difference, right? Is not just gather this information, make decisions based on this information, and implement that into your marketing. So we're doing consistent customer interviews. This leads to us having very customer-centric marketing. We are educating our buyers. We are helping, right? We're not selling. We're not pushing. We're not talking about all of the features that we have from our product or service. We're talking about what choosing to work with us, what choosing to buy from us will do for your organization, right? What can you do with us? What can you do for me, right? Again, you mentioned we have well thought out buyer personas. We know who our ideal customers are. We know who we are. We know who our customers are, and we know how to make an impact at their organization or in their lives. So, having that deep understanding of customers is certainly the first step in becoming a best-in-class marketing organization.
So Taylor, we touched on the number one priority when it comes from a mindset standpoint for organizations that are really doing a great job from a marketing standpoint is the customer. So what's that second one we need to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a deep understanding of your customer, I think the next logical step is we need to have a deep understanding of ourselves, right, and really our product. And if you're in a service space, just for the simplicity of this conversation, whatever we deliver to our customers, we're going to call that our product, right? Whether that's a physical product, whether that's a software, whether that's training, whether that's a service that we're providing, it's still the product that we're producing as an organization. So if we first have to have a deep understanding of our customer, next we need to have a deep understanding of our product. And again, these need to be real understandings, not surface level, well, we think this is what we do or this is the benefit that we have as an organization. If we're the more technical and the more difficult the space that we're in, the more there's a need for things like interviews with subject matter experts. Again, if you're in the marketing space, you're hired to promote the business. You should have a deep understanding of marketing and digital marketing, but you may not have a deep understanding of your industry or your product. So you need to spend the time that's required to be that mouthpiece for the organization, right? You need to really understand what it is that you produce and all the different aspects of that product that you produce. So important things to do, again, on a consistent basis are subject matter interviews. We need to do competitor and industry research. We really need to keep a pulse on our product and service that we're producing and what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, and you need to be, especially as if you're trying to become a category leader, right? You need to be the one who is setting the buying criteria and educating the market about your product and how to choose the right provider for your product or service. If all you're doing is kind of piggybacking on what the competitors may have set as the buying criteria and what the competitors is teaching your end customers about, then you're not really setting the trend. So especially from that standpoint, you want to be having subject matter experts that's on camera talking about how the industry is trending or how your product might help. Or like you said, really studying what the competition is doing and doing a better job of communicating the value proposition of your service offering or your product offering and making sure your customers fully understand your product. Don't leave it to chance. This is not something that you can just leave it to chance. It's something that you have to be intentional about learning what really resonates with your customer and then making sure you're turning that into value points that your customers can comprehend.
Absolutely, you agree. And so if we go down that list, right, and we say, okay, we want to become a best-in-class organization. We want to be growth-oriented. We really want to be a leader in the space. We understand our customer. We understand our product. What's next is really understanding marketing and understanding what's going on in 2023 and beyond when it comes to marketing, digital marketing, reaching our audience, influencing their decision-making process, and how that works. And so a couple of things we want to touch on, right, in terms of what best-in-class companies, what is their approach, what is their mindset when it comes to marketing. What we found is that the companies that are really winning and succeeding, they have a good understanding of short-term and long-term goals when it comes to marketing. Again, when we go back to what we just talked about with everything becoming so digital and having access to all this data and ROI metrics, some companies have shifted their focus to just look at short-term goals, right? And to say, hey, we know that best-in-class companies are investing in marketing, so we want to invest in marketing, but we want to test, right? And our test meaning we're going to run, LinkedIn ads or Facebook ads or Google ads for 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever that is, and if we don't get a positive ROI in that time frame, then we're going to write that channel off as something that doesn't work for our industry, right? We really need to understand how marketing works how it can work in our benefit, and how to build a brand, right? Best in class companies value brand and invest in brand building activities and understand the difference in brand building activities and what we would call demand capture activities, or channels like Google Ads, or bottom of the funnel search on SEO, those type of things that are more direct response, right? So you have to focus on the future and overall growth and scalability of your organization and your marketing department. And that comes from a top-down understanding of how marketing works and a value of marketing and how it can impact your organization.
Yeah, and we've seen this firsthand, how companies that did not have more of a long-term mindset and very much focus on short-term, right? They might run to you. Maybe this is an internal conversation. Oftentimes happen. Well, salespeople cannot meet their quota. We need to turn on some sort of Google Ads campaign. We need to fill the pipeline with some leads so we can hit the road running with some opportunities, so we can finish the quarter strong. Or coming to a marketing agency as a lifesaver and say, hey, what can you guys do in the next 90 days or 60 days, sometimes even 30 days, to get some quick win opportunities for our sales team, right? Where it's all about the short term and have no long-term vision in mind. And then if you don't see success in the short term, then they write that off and say, well, marketing doesn't work for us or the channel doesn't work for us. We've seen that time and time again, and we oftentimes caution our customers to get out of that mindset and to have more of a long-term vision and invest accordingly, and the importance of really having a strong brand and how that impacts buyer decisions, right? If your prospective customers recognize your brands, know your products, have seen your logo and your content and consume your information, they're going to have much deeper trust and trust in your organization and your product offering, much more likely to buy than someone who they just saw in an ad, and then expecting them to go through a demo and in 30 days decide to make a purchase from them.
Absolutely. And, one of the questions we get all the time when it comes down to, okay, what are best in class companies investing in marketing, right? And this does vary by company size, by industry, by organization. And, to be honest, we're not a huge fans of, blanket statistics around, well, you are in X industry, so you should spend X number of dollars. But at the same time, we want to give our audience, what they're looking for in terms of some sort of ballpark. So we want to share a couple of stats with you in terms of what best-in-class organizations are investing in their marketing, broken down by industry. So this is as a percentage of total revenue. So what we've seen and what the statistics show is that banking, finance, insurance spends about 8% of their revenue. This would be, I guess, gross revenue on their marketing. They're allocating about 8% of marketing, or their gross revenue towards marketing. Healthcare is a little bit higher. 18% of their revenue is allocated towards marketing. Manufacturing, 13%. Service business or consulting is, again, probably the highest here in the B2B space, about 21%. And then the average for B2B across the board, when you put them all together, an average is just shy of 10% at 9% of gross revenue towards marketing. So, if you're a B2B organization out there and you're trying to figure out how do we become a best-in-class company, one of the things that we've seen is, again, on paper, you say, okay, we're going to have the right mindset when it comes to marketing. So we really understand our customers. We really understand our product and service. We know who we are, and we just need more people to know who we are because we're kind of the best kept secret in our organization. So we're going to start investing into marketing. We hire a couple people for marketing. We start investing in some Google Ads or social media. Maybe we hire an agency, and then you wonder, well, why isn't it working? Why aren't we seeing the growth? Well, there's a number of reasons, right? I mean, there's so many variables that impact whether or not your marketing campaigns are going to be successful. But one thing that we do see a lot is companies that are underspending in relation to the size of their organization, and probably more importantly, the size of their market, right? Because sometimes we can confuse, well, we're a small organization, so we shouldn't invest X number of dollars in marketing, or we can't compete with some of these bigger companies. Like, we need to understand what is this total addressable market, what is the size of that audience that we're trying to get in front of, and then think realistically and logically around, if we're spending $60,000 or we're spending $100,000 or whatever that number is, like what are we really expecting? How much of that audience are you really expecting to get in front of with that type of budget? So I would look at those kind of metrics, and I would, again, if you're in the B2B space, if you're in a service business, consulting business, and the national average is showing 21% of the, your gross revenue is being allocated towards marketing, I would venture to say a lot of the companies that are struggling or saying that marketing doesn't work for them, they're not allocating anywhere near 21% of their dollars towards marketing. So I'm not saying you have to, or I'm not saying that's the key to success, but again, these are what best-in-class companies are doing. These are what the top companies, from a growth perspective, from a marketing standpoint, customer acquisition, brand affinity, brand awareness, this is what they're doing. So if you want to make a real change in your organization, you have to look yourself in the mirror and determine what type of company you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, you cannot just throw money at a problem and expect to solve that.
Not at all.
But that's part of the reason why we actually started with understanding the customer as one of the main thing too. So when you get to understand the customer, you will know where they congregate for information. You would know how they go about making a purchase decision for a product or service that you offer. You would know the kind of decision-making criteria that they have, right? And then also leads to your products and how to position your product in the marketplace in comparison to your alternatives that they have in the market, right? Really understanding how to position, whether in the messaging, in the channels that you would market or promote, all of those things have to be well understood as an organization, right? And then once you have those two things figured out, then the numbers have to also add up, right? Because you can't have unrealistic expectation on what marketing can do when you're under investing into marketing. And especially this goes back to what we also said about the long term versus short term. Especially when the leaders are very short term focused, they don't invest as much either because they don't value the long-term impact of what marketing can do, how that marketing investment is going to build a company value, how that brand equity is going to play a long game, how you play that long game to build that brand equity, not just in the short term, just win new accounts or win new logos, but especially in the future if you're trying to sell or get acquired or to do any of those things, that brand value is also going to play a big part in how that company value would be valued by some buyer or investor. So yes, you cannot emphasize the need for having the right amount of budget going into it, but just don't think that just throwing some money at a problem is going to solve the problem either.
Right. Yeah. And it's not just, as you mentioned, it's not just how much are we spending, right? In terms of identifying ourselves as, okay, we spend X number of dollars in marketing, so we're classified as the top 5% of organizations, right? We are best in class. It's driving results. And so what we've also found is that, best in class companies drive about 25 to 30% of their sales pipeline is marketing sourced revenue, right? So if you look at that, and actually I think there's some trends, and we've seen some trends depending on industry that the number is actually a little bit higher, right? Because we've seen a lot of companies shifting towards marketing driven organizations versus sales outbound in terms of driving that growth, particularly in early stage. We've seen changes in buying behavior. Even, you look at what's happened with post-COVID and work from home culture and those type of things, cold calling and cold outreach. Everybody is so inundated with emails and LinkedIn, in-mails and messages. And, we don't always have everybody's IP address and, phone number and all those type of things that we can do some of those same tactics that we were doing, a few years ago from a sales outreach perspective. So if you look at how do we grow as an organization, how do we get in front of new people, how do we acquire more customers, a lot of organizations are leaning heavily into marketing. And so the companies that are doing that well are driving, again, anywhere from 25 to maybe 50% of their new business from marketing. So if we look at that by the numbers, and we said, just for the sake of an example, we said, hey, we're a $10 million company in the B2B space. Again, based on B2B average, we should be allocating $900,000 to $1 million in annual marketing budget. Now, how you measure that is different for every company, and you might look at that number and say 900,000. That's for a $10 million business. Spending $1 million on marketing is crazy, but I think a lot of companies also don't measure their total marketing spend and total cost of acquisition correctly, right? They look at their hard costs in terms of outside costs and what they're paying an agency or what they're spending on Google Ads, and they're not counting internal overhead. They're not counting the if you have someone who wears, sales and marketing, right? And so you're interviewing salespeople, and salespeople are creating content, or salespeople are doing the marketing for you. They're putting that budget into sales overhead versus marketing overhead. So clearly defining what are sales activities and what are marketing activities is first and foremost. All the overhead that it takes, if you're doing trade shows, if you're investing into technologies, you have marketing tech, ad spend, agencies, so in-house, outsource, all those type of things. I mean, you can quickly get up to that number of $600, $700, $800, $900,000 when it comes to marketing. So if you're not spending anywhere near that, then I think, again, you need to reevaluate what your expectations are from a marketing perspective, and how do we free up more budget to invest into marketing, because again, that's where the majority of the new business growth is coming from. So if we said, hey, we're a $10 million company and 30% of our revenue is marketing source, that's about $3.3 million in marketing source revenue, right? So you have to look at what are our growth goals, what percentage of growth do we anticipate to come from marketing, and then that's when you can start looking at your overall ROI numbers, again, both short-term and long-term. And obviously there's a lot of variables that impact this, right? These are kind of blanket statements. Overall, your business model is going to impact, is this a one-off sale? Are these repeat customers? Are they on subscription model? What is your overall lifetime value of a customer, and how much are you willing to spend in terms of acquisition? What is the length of the sales cycle? What's the overall size of your company, the industry that you're in? I think market maturity is another thing that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of how much we should spend on marketing, what kind of ROI we should see. What does your market look like? What do your customers know about your market or your industry or your product? Is this something that is, well known and, maybe commoditized? Is this something that there's a lot of education required in order for them to understand the need and value for your service or your product? There's a lot that needs to happen. Your brand maturity, again, is going to impact overall lifetime value, is going to impact sales velocity. We need to understand the competition. So, obviously you're not going to just take these metrics and take these numbers and try to implement them into your organization, but you should set goals based on what you believe it will take to be a best-in-class organization for your industry and what that means for you as a company. And you can use these metrics as sort of benchmarks to help guide you.
Yeah, and especially like what we've seen in the B2B space is most of the B2B clients that we've ever dealt with, they all have long sales cycle, consider purchase process, and extremely high lifetime value for each customer. So it may seem as though the cost of acquisition might be a little bit high in the beginning, but if the lifetime value is great enough, then you need to be the ones that are investing the most, especially if you want to compete in a hyper-competitive marketplace. So when you talked about like the industry or the market maturity, if you're going into a market that have a couple of major players who owns the marketplace and owns the majority of the market share, then you cannot be a small player and expect to have much growth from it, right? So you need to be investing much more aggressively to acquire customers, because whoever can spend the most on acquisition can win at the end of the day, right? Because if you're not getting found and if you're not getting the impression in the market awareness that you need for your brand, you're not going to win. So keep in mind the customer lifetime value is an ingredient that you need to be considering when you are investing. And if the lifetime value is great enough, you should be investing as much as possible to win.
Yeah, and I see the opposite happen a lot as well, right? Where the industry in general, particularly in the B2B space, if you're working with maybe something that's a little bit more old school manufacturing type companies, those sort of organizations, you look at the lack of industry activity, and then, a lot of companies or business leaders will say, well, that's just not how our industry works, right? And they stick with the status quo because that's what our customers don't find us online, or our customers don't make purchase decisions online, or they're not influenced by marketing, right? That's not how our industry works. What best-in-class companies see there in terms of lack of industry activity, they see that as an opportunity rather than an excuse to maintain the status quo. You look at that and you say, wow, this is a completely blue ocean. Nobody in my industry is doing this, so I can be the first, right? I can get that first mover advantage. I can change the way that we reach our audience in our industry. I can change the way that buying decisions are made, and I can actually write that roadmap, and I can create that. I can be the one to educate our customers and ultimately I can be the one to win, right? So best-in-class companies see that lack of industry activity as an opportunity rather than an excuse.
Yeah, that goes to the mindset thing that we were talking about earlier, right? That is definitely a mindset shift, right? Just like, oh, not everybody's doing it, so we're just going to do what everybody else is doing. You don't want to do that. You certainly want to be proactive in how, take control of your destiny by taking action.
Sure. So along with that mindset, right, other factors that we see and other characteristics of best-in-class companies have a continuous improvement mindset, right? So they are always open to testing and learning. They're looking for ways to invest into what we call employee L&D, right, learning and development. They have a culture of best idea wins. We're not married or stuck to one idea, or hey, we're paying for this person to be in this position, so whatever they say is the right way, right? We have to have the right culture internally to create and cultivate that innovation and that risk taking mindset, if you will, or the ability to take some risks and test and learn. And so I think that overall idea of continuous improvement and not being afraid to fail when it comes to marketing, you can come up with as much hypotheses as you want in terms of what you think is going to work and what you did at your last company and what you see other competitors doing in the marketing space. But at the end of the day, the data is going to actually dictate what that strategy should look like. You need to come up with good ideas. You need to fail fast and test and improve, and having that continuous improvement mindset and culture internally is a big factor when it comes to being a successful organization, particularly from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, and this is where I would also challenge the leadership, not just the marketing team members or the sales team members, but I think the leadership need to be much more proactive about this, because if you don't encourage this from your department heads, they're not going to be very good when it comes to risk taking, or they're not going to become very proactive in coming up with new ideas. What you don't want is someone who's been in that same role for 2, 3, 4+ years, and maybe sometimes even a lot longer. We've seen that across other organizations where they just get extremely complacent, super comfortable with what they've done in the last 5, 7, 10 years. They just keep repeating that same thing, and it's the same playbook. And they haven't realized their competitors have changed their strategy, the market has completely changed, or even just their end buyers have completely changed. Especially when we talk about like manufacturing sector, you brought that up earlier. The companies were founded by their former founders, who were probably the first generation or so that started the company. They built a business on relationships, and now the end buyers are no longer there, and they're now still trying to live off of those relationships that their former ownership may have built, and they are not willing to change their game, their playbook. So this is going to be a big surprise for many of those companies as the industry is completely shifting, and many of them have actually kind of recognized it during the COVID time. But it is only going to get even faster. That change is going to happen. So we couldn't emphasize more the best-in-class companies are not just waiting around for just the status quo thing to happen, encouraging their team leaders, especially in the marketing and sales, to take risk, change strategy, change course, come up with new ideas and innovative ways to go promote their business, get in front of their target customers. That has to be part of the overarching strategy, and continuously improving, not just keep repeating the same old strategy.
I agree 100%. It has to come top down. It starts with leadership. It starts with understanding what type of risk we need to take and what the result of those risks will be. A lot of times, as you mentioned, that cost of inaction can be exponentially greater than the micro cost of testing a channel, testing a campaign strategy. That we may have, let's say failed at, but we'll certainly learn from that, right? So the compounding impact of that, let's test this, let's test this, let's test that, we'll put some money here, we'll put some budget there, and you may look at that and say, we spent X number of dollars over 6 months, or over a year, over 6 years, whatever that is, and it's still the old Thomas Edison quote, right? It's like, well, we just learned all these 1,000 ways that this didn't work, right? But the cost of inaction, you might not have any hard, expenses, right? And costs where you say, well, we didn't I'm glad we didn't do this, or we didn't go to this trade show, or we didn't spend money in this channel this month or this quarter because we saved that money, right? But as you mentioned, the competition isn't sitting around. They're not sitting on their hands. So their growth every day that goes by, where they are testing, improving, in reaching their audience and reaching their customers and acquiring customers, that gap is growing exponentially between the customer who is committed to improvement, the company that's committed to improvement, and the company that is too risk averse to invest.
Yeah, and I think the Elon Musk, I'm not exactly sure the quote that he said, but he encourages his team leads and his employees to take risks. And he also said the consequences of taking risk and failing is not high at all. So that he gives people the freedom to go test new ideas, test new ways of doing things. And clearly that's reflected in the companies that he owns. They are, bounds ahead of their competitors in terms of innovation and new ways of doing stuff, right? Like even look at the space missions that he has, or the battery powered or AI driven things that he's doing. It's just crazy, beyond imagination. But I think that comes from the top down. Definitely an example would be to just kind of study leaders like Elon Musk and how they're encouraging their companies to do more risky things. But it's calculated risk, but it's actually something that you have to make sure that you do allow from top down for their subordinates to do.
Sure. Yeah, and one thing that I want to make sure that we're clear on is that it's not that we're not results driven or we're not results oriented, right? In fact, it's the opposite. Best in class companies are very results oriented and almost have a need for that perfection when it comes to, generating ROI and reaching their customers and maximizing their marketing dollars. And it's the understanding that in order to get there, we need to have that continuous improvement mindset, and we need to be able to test and iterate along the way, right? So we need to be results oriented, but not hyper focused on, outdated or vanity metrics, right? A lot of times we see organizations that think they're, best in class because of metrics around, number of leads that are being generated, or traffic to the website, or clicks or impressions, or whatever those metrics are that they've, for whatever reason, decided those are the KPIs or those are indicators of success, and not realizing that, again, things have changed, business has changed. We shouldn't just be continuously trying to generate a list of leads, right, of people who maybe saw an ad on Facebook or social media or something like that. Like, we really need to look at how do we influence our customers' buying decisions, and how do we fill our sales pipeline and our sales team's pipeline with sales-ready leads and sales-ready opportunities. So you need to know what those metrics are, and you need to be fluid with, again, how we define success and able to make adjustments to those dashboards, those metrics, however we're grading our team's performance. So continuously be looking at what metrics are indicators of success, how do we measure those, and how do we influence those. And the results of those, campaigns or whatever is successful to us needs to be realistic and relevant to our buying cycle, our business, our industry, our customers. So it goes back to what we said earlier about really knowing your audience, knowing your product, knowing your customer, and apply that to the metrics that you're measuring from a marketing perspective. So again, a lot of times I look at short-term and long-term metrics in relation to what was the purpose of the campaign, right? We shouldn't be judging brand building type campaigns or activities or ad spend the same way that we're judging branded searches on Google Ads, right? A lot of times we look at marketing organizations that are trying to report to leadership that doesn't truly understand marketing, and they'll say, hey, we have $50 cost per lead or whatever it is, and the reason that it is because again, you're getting branded searches is the number one driver of leads. And so in the short term, the best way to get the lowest cost per lead is to cut all ad spend that's going to reach a new audience and put all the ad spend into those very bottom of the funnel branded searches of people who probably would have found your website anyway, just to spruce up the marketing reports and make you look good for your next quarterly report to the board or to leadership, right? So really understanding what results are important to you as an organization and what they mean in the short term and long term is something that is really invaluable when it comes to creating that culture of, hey, we are a best in class organization and we understand how marketing can drive us forward.
One thing I would also add would be more of like a understanding the leading indicators of success. So if you are doing marketing campaigns and things like that, knowing what are the leading indicators that it is going to end in the lag measures, which is going to be the deals, right? So like you said, in terms of the sales velocity and close ratio and all of those things could be an indication of what activities may have contributed to that. So if you're doing branded campaigns or branded search ads, yes, you're going to have a lot low cost of leads, and you might even see a higher close ratio because those are people who actually knew you in the first hand, and they just happen to find you through whatever that search campaign. But if you really are trying to build a strong brand, maybe there are things that you might do, a podcast or videos or appearing on somebody else's shows or being a spokesperson for some sort of an association or speaking at events, all of which are probably very time consuming and expensive endeavors, may not have any metrics that you can measure to show success. But that actually still could be contributing to brand awareness that led to people looking for you by your brand name and then converting. So, but the lag measures of sales is the only thing you measure, and then you don't recognize how all the other activities are contributing into your overall success. May just make your leadership say, don't go waste your time on webinars and podcasts and whatever else. Don't write another blog. Just keep spending more money on our brand name. So you do want to make sure that you're measuring both the lag and leading indicators.
Yeah, and actually typically the activities in the short term that end up having the biggest impact on those lag measures individually are some of the maybe worst performing, right, on paper activities, right? Because as you mentioned, that one blog that you wrote, or that one podcast that you did, or the one webinar that you did, one speaking engagement that you did, those type of activities as one-off individual under a microscope events and activities, probably not going to produce anything, right? And we use these type of analogies all the time, but it's akin to going to the gym one time and saying, well, I don't look the way that I want to. I went to the gym, I did some sit-ups, I don't have a six-pack, so never doing that again, right? Let's cancel the membership because we're just wasting money and wasting energy going to the gym. It's the compounding and cumulative effect of those individual activities that, as you mentioned, are going to lead to those lag measures of, now that we're building some brand awareness, building some brand affinity, we're increasing our sales velocity, we're closing deals a lot faster. People are willing to pay more to work with us because they have, again, that affinity towards our brand. So our lifetime value of a customer goes up. They stay around longer, which again, the lifetime value of a customer goes up. In theory, we're now able to spend more to acquire a customer because our lifetime value of a customer is higher. But the more brand awareness and affinity that we have, the faster the sales velocity, the less we have to spend on marketing because we have some brand awareness, the more referrals and word of mouth that we're going to build, both in channel in terms of social media, as well as just literally general word of mouth and referrals. So all of those things actually bring our cost of acquisition down. Pair that with a higher lifetime value, now our profitability is going up, right? So you can't point to one webinar or one LinkedIn post that accounted for all of that. It's the cumulative, again, compound effect of doing that consistently over time. Just like anything really in life and in business, it's no different when it comes to marketing. So, Sam, we've talked in theory about the mindset that best-in-class organizations have around marketing. Let's rattle off and let's go through a couple of companies, right, in terms of actual examples of organization and companies we've seen, and maybe not just from a just marketing perspective, but in terms of the right mindset of these things that we're talking about, understanding the customer, understanding the audience, having a willingness to take risk and change and adapt with the times. What are some good examples of companies that our listeners may be familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I think one example that I can probably lead, it's not just on the marketing side alone, but overall how to go to market, right? I think Salesforce is probably one of the first to have gone more of a subscription based on a per user model from a sales, and they succeeded. And when originally Salesforce CEO went to Oracle when he was an Oracle employee, and he brought up the idea, Mark Benioff, he brought up the idea of a subscription model, and that was shot down by the leadership at Oracle, and they said that idea would not work. But that, Mark was able to put his life on the line and start that sort of a model for pricing, and he went to market and made it into a subscription model. Now Salesforce is a leader, and they've also, very customer centric, and from the very beginning, they've always created products and service offering all around the customer, and have invested heavily into marketing and sales, and clearly reflected in their earnings and in how fast the company has grown. So I would say one example might be Salesforce. May not be a company that everybody can relate to because of how massive of an organization that is. But again, they took risk on how to position their product, how to price their product, how to go to market and promote their product, and ultimately has earned to be one of the biggest players in the CRM space.
Sure. Yeah, and other, obvious ones, that again, companies that are seen as innovators, Uber, Airbnb, Apple, you talked about Salesforce, Tesla is one kind of a disruptor and innovator in the space. Again, when you talk about marketing, whether it's, their marketing, their sales, their go-to-market, their overall just approach to business, they have all those characteristics that we talked about in terms of best-in-class companies. Other more, I guess, maybe smaller scale examples that are, B2B focused, that we've seen, really make huge impacts by embracing and embodying these type of characteristics would be, one that comes to mind is HubSpot, right? And generating and creating this idea of inbound marketing, basically coining that term, teaching, they understood their audience so much that they understood that I need to teach our audience how to do inbound marketing, and then that's how I'm going to sell them the tools in order to execute it. First, I need to teach them the why and the how, and then give them the tools to make that happen. Companies like Drift, also come to mind in terms of shaking things up and talking about, hey, the MQL is dead, and conversational marketing is the way to go. So there's a lot of companies like that in the tech space that we've seen really understand their customer, their marketing, and developing strategies in order to reach them. And again, I'm sure there's some on paper, on a small scale, some ideas of times where maybe there was some wasted, so to speak, marketing budget or marketing efforts. And if they were to give up after the first attempt at, leveraging organic search or paid search or social media, TikTok, whatever it may be, they wouldn't be the companies that they are today.
Most certainly.
And some, examples of companies that didn't embrace that, didn't have that continuous improvement mindset, weren't open to change. Obviously, there's the famous examples of, Blockbuster and Kodak. I think those are, should be messages to all of us as leaders of organizations to understand like what happens if we're stuck in our ways and stuck with the status quo. We can't have those terms in our vocabulary of this is the way that it's done, or this is the way that it's always been. And that's as an organization, right? And that trickles down into each department. And what we're talking about, obviously, our focus and our expertise is in marketing, but certainly can be the mindset and approach when it comes to marketing is that this is just the way our industry works. This is just the way it is. We need to be innovators. We need to constantly be challenging the status quo and rewriting the script.
Yeah, and every day I think if you're waking up as a leader, just asking yourself, what could be happening in the industry, what could be happening in the marketplace that might put my business out of business, and figuring out what do I need to do to pivot, what do I need to do to reinvent our business, right? And the way we service our customer, the way we position our products, the way we make our products, because at the end of the day, there's anything could happen. No one ever thought the taxi industry was going to be completely disrupted. No one ever thought the hotel industry was going to be completely disrupted. No one ever thought Kodak would ever go out of business. Mm-hmm. Everybody used the film, and that's how they taken photos, and that's what everybody thought would be the future. And Kodak actually had the opportunity to create digital camera, but they kind of misused that opportunity because they were making a ton of money on films. So they figured, well, if we just introduce digital cameras, we're going to lose our money-making product, and that's going to put us out of business. What if they actually embraced it? They could probably be an industry leader and probably have been in business and doing things, sure. What other industry leaders have ended up doing. So yeah, I think regardless of what the product or service that you offer, you need to always be challenging the status quo, thinking of ways to innovate, and give your leadership and your team members the opportunity to go take risks. And at the end of the day, marketing, it does require a lot of it does require a lot of things to succeed. But these core areas we talked about from a mindset and approach has to be taken into account before you go run with it.
Absolutely. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Again, we're really excited about this sort of mini series around best-in-class organizations and observations that we've seen and data that we've collected around what best-in-class companies are doing from a marketing perspective. So, again, today was really just about the mindset and approach that these organizations have when it comes to marketing and a little bit, when it comes to sales and their organization. In future episodes, we're going to dive deep into exactly what their marketing strategies look like, right? What are best-in-class companies doing? What does their marketing organization look like in terms of their team structure? What are they doing in-house? What are they outsourcing? What channels are they investing into? What technologies are they investing into? What are they doing from a sales perspective? What do their websites look like? So there's a lot of great information coming up in the next few weeks around best-in-class organizations. So please, tune back in next week for the episode. Please give us a like on whatever platform you're listening to. Subscribe to the channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening, and share with a friend. It really helps. Leave us a comment if there's any topics that you want us to cover or anything that you feel like we missed in terms of what best-in-class organizations are doing. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by One IMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.